What happens when you believe nothing is impossible? Learn more right now on The Leadership Voice. Welcome to The Leadership Voice. I'm your host, Jay Barbuto. Our guest today is highly acclaimed entrepreneur and philanthropist, Patty Arvielo. We have a great show planned for you today, so let's get things started with our quote of the day. Today's quote comes from Antonio Tejadino, President and CEO of the Hispanic Heritage Foundation. You are not lucky to be here. The world needs your perspective. They are lucky to have you. Our guest today is Patty Arvielo. Living by the credo, with risk comes reward, Patty co-founded New American Funding in 2003. In the years since, the company grew into one of the largest independent mortgage bankers in the United States. As a single largest Hispanic women-owned private mortgage company in the nation, New American Funding has made Inc. 5000's list of fastest growing companies in America 7 times. It has also been recognized as one of the best workplaces in the nation for women and millennials by Fortune and Great Place to Work. Today, Patty manages the operations and sales for New American Funding's headquarters and continues to originate and book millions in home loans each month. Patty currently oversees nearly 3,500 employees, 54% of which are women, 39% are millennials, and 41% are minorities, many of whom serve in key positions within the company. She is both a titan of business and philanthropy. Please welcome to the show, great person, great friend, Patty Arvielo.
Hi, Jay. Thanks for having me.
Patty, it's great to have you on the show to share your wisdom and your journey. Maybe we could go ahead and start with a little bit about your journey and how it eventually led to you starting your business.
Sure. So that would be a really long show. I think maybe I said that the last time. I'll be celebrating my 42nd year in mortgage this year. So, I'm from around here. I grew up in La Mirada. I actually was Miss La Mirada. And so I stumbled on a clerical position up the street, actually in Fullerton, for TransUnion Credit. And it was because at that time it would pay me the most per hour that I could earn. So I just kind of stumbled in to a career that I didn't realize was a career at 16. So obviously nobody knows what they want to be when they're young, right? I just knew that I wanted to make the most money I could make per hour at that time. I was always very, very goal-oriented. I am money hungry. I just wanted what maybe my family didn't have so that I could actually provide for my family, sort of this like inherent need to take care of my family.
And so you took this part-time job and it was in that industry.
Yes.
And so how did you transition in that towards becoming a banker?
I know. It's, it's climbing the ladder. I think a lot of times people want to be at the top tier of the ladder, and I started at the bottom and just started to climb up the ladder and found that jobs that were utilizing my skills were making more money than I was making at the hourly position. So I started to see, okay, what's it like if I were to go get an entry-level position at a mortgage company? And so that's kind of how the research / opportunity became for me, is that I kind of stuck on the same path. But mainly because it paid really well, right? It wasn't like, oh, I found my passion at 16. Nobody does. At that point in time, it was this just desire to be independent and take care of myself and my family.
So in the beginning, it was mostly just about making enough money to be able to roof over the head or to be able to survive.
Yeah, want the nice cars, then you got to work for it. Like at that very young age, I just saw other people that had things that I desired, and I wanted to make enough money to be able to acquire, cars and that. I mean, it really was the reason I didn't go to college.
So in this process, though, you discovered you were good at some things.
Yes.
So what happened? Must have been an epiphany where you said, I'm good at this.
Yeah, that didn't happen until 40, but I think, I was a hard worker. And I knew that, it was one of the reasons I didn't actually go to college, which is the biggest regret, one of the biggest regrets of my life. I wouldn't do my life over, but it actually was. I think I told you I walked on to Cal State Fullerton's campus to sign up for my classes. But at that time, I'd already been working full time, and I already had a big car payment because, you do everything wrong before you do everything right. So I had this really expensive car, and I was like, there's no way I can go to school full time and afford the debt that I had put myself in. So these wrong decisions ended up being good decisions later in life. But I did everything wrong in the beginning, like most of us. But it was the reason I didn't go to school was because, number one, I would have to pay for it, and I had too much debt.
Wow. So you're working in the industry, working as a loan officer,
Receptionist and a loan opener.
Loan opener. And at what point did you start getting into some of the more advanced positions before you started your own business?
Well, I made every mistake I could make from the time I was 16 till about 24. And at 24, at the young age of 24, I was married with a baby. And I don't know, maybe that I had to be responsible for somebody else. And, that's what's so great about your 20s. You can kind of mess them all up and, you'll learn. But that sense of being a mother and being responsible for another human being, I really grew up a lot. And I was super fortunate to stumble across a company called Countrywide Home Mortgage Loans. And I took an entry-level position there. Even though I was so advanced to take this one entry-level position, I knew that if I could get my foot in the door in this company, I knew the opportunities that were there for me because I had a girlfriend there that was making a ton of money, much more than I was making at a competitor. And so at that time, I took just whatever job I could get in the company, and then I just, shine. I just went in there and did what I did. And within 1 year, I was actually the branch manager. So I went from entry-level clerk to running the branch in a year by pretty much outworking everybody else. But
so you've always done it with a lot of hard work.
Yes, 100%.
So how long from that point before you said, I'm going to start my own gig?
Oh, geez. So the 20s continue to be an extraordinary learning experience for me. Not only did I think, you get married and you have this piece of paper and you're supposed to stay together. Well, no. So that doesn't happen. That's not reality. Marriages take work. Relationships take work, just like jobs. So 8 months after I had my first baby, I was pregnant with my second. So at 25, I had 2 babies. Nice. And working full-time, and working not just full-time, but on average 12 hours a day, because I was so hungry because I had such a great amount of opportunity at Countrywide at that time. And, I was making so much money at that time, I even called my mom and said, Mom, I'm making more money than a doctor. I remember telling her that. But with that became sacrifices, right? I sacrificed who I was as a mother. I sacrificed who I was as a wife. And at 30, I was no longer married, which, that happens. And that again, your adversity is your strength. I mean, I thought it was the end of the world. And what it did for me is it made me realize that, number one, I had to pay attention to the personal matters in my life, that money is not the be-all, end-all. It's not. It doesn't make you happy. It gives you freedom, but it doesn't make you happy. I was not happy. And I remember sitting in the shower crying, and I said, I will never feel this way again, meaning that I would never be reliant on a partner to hold me up emotionally or to support me, with money. And so at that point in time is kind of when I went on my entrepreneurial journey, because I had always worked for a company. And I think sometimes people think that you become an entrepreneur or you have to make a choice. I made the choice because I needed the freedom, because I didn't have enough money to pay a babysitter. So I had to be able to manage my own hours.
So then shortly thereafter, you decided to start New American Funding.
Yes. So that also came on a really ironic opportunity. I'd met a few young, powerful, new college graduates. I was 31, and they had just graduated college, so there were roughly 22. And they were all from the San Diego area. They graduated USD and San Diego State, and they got into the mortgage business. And I met them in a restaurant in Corona Del Mar, and they started asking me what I did. And I said, well, I've been in the mortgage business. They're like, we're in the mortgage business. And they said, well, they found out how qualified I was. They're like, we need you to come work for us. And I thought at the moment, I'm going to work for these kids. Like, why would I do that? And they're like, well, we'll pay you $495 a file. And I'm like, well, how many files are you doing a month? They go, about 50. And I'm like, okay, I'll come visit you. So I went and visited them, and that was New American Financial. And so I was an early on starter. Actually, they started the company, and I came in as their operational partner. And about 2 years after that, my now husband, who is now my business partner, we started dating, and he had sold his first company already. And I'm like, yes, I have a stable partner. Like, I don't have to worry about taking care of anybody. Well, he invested all that money in tech stocks, and then it wiped him out after the crash. And so he had never had a job in his entire life, meaning that he was an entrepreneur since he was 16. And I said, well, why don't you come to work with me? Mortgages are really great. You might really like it. So that was kind of the spark at the beginning of the union of New American Funding. And so what happened is the kids that I started the company with, that was not what their passion was. They weren't in love with the mortgage industry. They're like, they wanted to do other things, and they're all highly successful in other things. So that was our position to be able to buy New American Financial, and then we named it New American Funding.
And so, and the company, has it been successful all the way through, like right from the beginning, or did it have some dips?
Well, we endured the financial crisis, so I would say that was the only real dip we've had. We're currently in a dip right now, but we're thriving because of it, because of really great strategic planning. But, has it been easy? No. I mean, nothing you're learning. I didn't know how to run a mortgage company. There's not a school. There's not a college course. So everything I've done has been by learning by making the mistakes, right? So making mistakes obviously doesn't feel good, but it's in those mistakes where then I would search for the solution.
So what were some of the biggest challenges that you had to overcome as you were growing New American Funding?
Probably the over-regulation of our industry, and really getting to know how it doesn't make sense how we're regulated, and that I only have one voice. And so really kind of learning how to operate in a heavily regulated space was one thing. Attaining capital was another. I had never, I had a credit card, I was applying for multi-million-dollar credit lines at that point and didn't really understand what I was doing and the risk, because we have to personal guarantee. So what that means is that when you're taking on credit debt to be able to lend it, and you're signing a personal guarantee, I'm pretty much saying if something goes wrong, I'm losing everything, meaning my house, my cars. They'll come in and take anything. So that fear, is scary when running a company and thinking about the possibility of failure. So that was probably one of the hardest things to overcome, was not letting fear control me, and letting the risk part of it, be the solution to it. Because if you don't take the risk, you're never going to win, right? You have to take chances on the business and yourself.
So that must be really stressful to have to guarantee, especially in those growing years, knowing that if something does go wrong, it's going to affect everything.
Yeah. Nobody wants to go to work to think they're going to lose everything. So, yeah, it was fear. Now, I don't feel like that today, because you set yourself up for the future, right? You start to do so well that you can negotiate out of personal guarantees. But in the beginning, it's quite stressful to start any company, because there's so many people and so many things that are in control of your destiny. It's not just you anymore.
And you've always been a hard worker, so you would always just work and outwork to make sure one way or another you were going to succeed.
Yeah, I know it sounds always so cliche, you got to work hard. And but there are people that are trying to figure out how to not work hard. And that's fine, because it's always a personal decision on where you want to be in your life. I get asked all the time, work-life balance, it doesn't exist for someone like me. But it is a choice that you make. But if you do choose to be successful, it does come with an extraordinary amount of hours and dedication from a personal level. And you do sacrifice being a good wife some days and a good mom some days. So there's a lot of sacrifices that come with success.
Now, New American Funding has grown to be the largest Latina-owned company in its industry. So what were some of the unique challenges of being a Latina woman in this industry and trying to grow the business?
I think it's the same challenges that exist today. I had zero representation and zero role models. I mean, even J-Lo's younger than me, and Eva Longoria, and all the Sofia Vergara, but I can't be them, right? We lack representation in business. There are many, many successful Latinas, yet we don't see them. They don't talk about us. They don't write about us. The media doesn't cover our stories. And that's hard because, since the beginning of time, I would walk into a boardroom, and I'm extraordinarily spicy and very passionate and energetic. And that comes from my culture and the way, if you see my whole family, everybody would hug everybody and we're loud. And so because culturally I was raised that way, it was seen as, she's bossy, she's, whatever. And so people didn't understand me. And I always had to, explain to them why I walked in the room a certain way, because I'm not going to change who I am. So the lack of representation still exists. I want to change that. I'm working towards changing that. But that is really what hinders Latinas culturally seeing themselves in companies.
Wow. So obviously it's a process, but when did New American Funding, when did you look at the business and say, we're going to make it?
Well, our balance sheet is extraordinarily beautiful. So
was it always?
Well, we run I'm super uber Latina too. So I made all the mistakes. And like I said, I went into debt very early. I made all the financial mistakes really early. So I learned from those. I was lucky I did it early. You want to fail early. That's why I talk about college being a safe place to fail, your 20s being a safe place to fail. And because if you really think about your lows and you change the trajectory of those mistakes to a more positive path, you will then create, self-worth. You're not relying on anybody else. And financial literacy is something that we still don't talk about a lot. So I had to learn it on my own. So early failure was the lesson to create wealth at a very young age. So at the age of 31, I told my girlfriend, I will never feel the way that I feel right now today. By the time I'm 40, I'm going to have $10 million liquid cash saved in the bank. I just did. And I did. And so when you have so much capital behind you that's safe, and you're risking in business and knowing that if this fails, you still have this, there's that stress. I set myself up so that I could completely focus on winning in business and not worrying about my personal life. So it was then, I remember when we made our first million. I remember telling my daughter we made our first million. I'm like, oh my gosh, we made $1 million this month. And that was in the first maybe year or so of the business. But we were very, very good about keeping capital in the business. Like Rick and I didn't live extravagant lifestyles. We had the same house literally until like 13 years ago. Then we sold that house and built a new house in Corona del Mar. And we didn't have expensive cars. We had nice cars, but they weren't, expensive cars. So I think that we just built our company very sustainable. We've kept about 90% of all profits in the last 21 years in the company.
So it hasn't been mistake-free.
No.
But you have really learned as you've gone along.
Yeah.
You say the school of hard knocks, but you learned the lessons that needed to be learned, and it sounds like you didn't repeat a lot of the same mistakes.
I never make them twice, ever.
So there's something to be said for developing wisdom from our mistakes, and you've definitely learned from mistakes that got made because you've grown into a wonderful, successful company and a wonderful, successful person. So congratulations.
Thank you
For that. So what's next for Patty?
The only good thing about getting old is that you care. I am getting old. It just happens. Is that in this point in time in my life, I find joy in serving others and doing for others. So, I have become very good at angel investing. So I make an effort to invest my capital into Latina-owned, founded companies. And so I currently have 5 right now in my portfolio that I've invested in. One of them just sold, so it's extraordinary. She's going to be the first Latina that it's going to come out in about 7 weeks that it's going to sell her company for this disclosed amount in the history of our country. So I keep them like, first Latina this, first Latina that. I would like to leave my career not being the first anymore. Like there's so many of these amazing women graduating college, opening their own companies that have come from the same culture that I do. So I see that their stories are going to become, so tremendous that they need somebody like me to be able to tell them it's okay. Yes, that's going to happen. Yes, speak up. No, you're not bossy. You're not spicy. It's just who we are. So I've really made a mission to do that. I'm doing it through my business school at Vanguard University. 63% Latinx enrolled. And so my focus there is to give back to the students there and to really give them some instrumental, give them my lessons, give them my mistakes. So I'm in the process of coming up and writing a book about all my mistakes. And I know who wants to buy a book about mistakes, but in turn, those mistakes, which I think most people make, turn into extraordinary achievements.
Oh, that's great. So we're going to take a break for just a moment, and we're going to come back and we're going to talk about your business philosophies.
Awesome.
Great. It's now time for a featured segment of the Leadership Voice. It's today's Did You Know? Today's Did You Know comes from lendingtree.com. 1/3 of adult Americans own a mortgaged home, with the total mortgage debt exceeding $12 trillion. 70% of the average family debt is their mortgage. It's now time for our Leadership Countdown. Today's countdown comes from HuffPost.com. Women aren't just breaking glass ceilings, they're blazing professional trails. They're achieving executive roles and founding companies more than ever. Here are 10 tips for women to keep blazing in male-dominated industries. Number 10, support and empower other women. Number 9, recognize the value of a mentor. Number 8, link up with other women in the industry. Number 7, fearlessly ask for more. Number 6, make your voice heard. Tip number 5 is to develop a thick skin and a good sense of humor. Number 4, break through stereotypes. Number 3, meet challenges with solid support. Number 2, be assertive but not overly aggressive. And the top tip for women blazing new trails, just do it. Stick around, we have more with Patty Arvielo right after this commercial break. The Bringing Learning to Work program is our way of connecting the faculty of Cal State Fullerton with the business community of Orange County and Southern California. We have over 72 training programs that are available via distance or face-to-face. And the faculty come to your company and they deliver the training to your employees.
The Bringing Learning to Work program is really fundamentally, it's leadership programming. We do diversity and emotional intelligence training. We partner with Cal State Fullerton because they had subject matter experts in these fields. And we're really fortunate and privileged to be able to do that.
Many companies can't afford training and development personnel. And so this is a great opportunity to leverage Cal State's faculty to help them develop their learning programs.
The leadership of the center and the students allow me to not only bring leadership development to my company, but allow me to interact with some amazing students who have grit, potential, and just amazing futures in front of them, and I get to take part of that. It's a wonderful feeling.
When your organization is ready to develop its talent, reach out to the Center for Leadership and we'll help get you there. Welcome back to the Leadership Voice. Patty, we talked about New American Funding, we talked a little bit about your journey. Now let's talk more about your business philosophy. So you've invested not just in New American funding, but you've invested in other things as well. Tell us about your other investments.
Well, I mean, we started years ago now investing in real estate. I mean, we're in real estate. It's something we know. It's something we're comfortable in. I think my husband and I jointly agree that, we kind of follow the rich dad, poor dad philosophy. So we generally start looking for things, and Rick's a master at it, with things that are going to produce income to us, right? So when you have this fear that this company that you built, something might go wrong with it, you've got to sustain your lifestyle through other channels. So we started investing in commercial real estate. I think one of the biggest commercial real estate acquisitions was just last week, and that was from us. We bought One MacArthur Place up the street, one of those big brick towers on the 55, so that now belongs to Rick and I. So we're going to move our corporate headquarters into that building, and then we have another building in Tustin. We're actually going to redevelop that building into industrial space, because everybody needs industrial space now that Amazon is the way, and people need to store what they're going to ship to us in more industrial space rather than office buildings. So mostly, commercial real estate is what we know. It's not exactly what we do, but it is what we know and where our knowledge base is.
So how do you decide what will be a good investment? How do you choose your investments?
Rick studies data. So even with the last building, the building next door was purchased for 3 times the amount we just paid for the building we bought last week. So he started to track the data around it, and it seems that the note holder was either going to take back the building. So you can look at foreclosure data, mispayment data. There's several reports that you can follow. But data tells so much about everything. All stories are in data. All stories are in data. So he searches data to see where it makes sense. And the fact that we like to be owner-operators of our commercial buildings. So we have several corporate locations across the country, and we own most of the buildings that we're in.
And so when you buy these businesses, when you buy the commercial real estate, talk about the decision to go commercial real estate versus other types of real estate investments like residential and things like that.
Right. So it became a need. And actually, George Arduous was Rick's mentor. He kind of studied what he started to do early on in his career. So again, that's why mentorship matters so much for all of us, is that if you see somebody else who's been successful doing something, I mean, it's really not that hard to emulate what they've done and study what they've done. So I would say that George Arduous was a big inspiration for Rick and going on the commercial side. We've always been very heavy in residential. That's what we do. So we've bought and have several homes in California, and Las Vegas and Mexico. So, that's the easy part. But going into a space that we didn't know, he had to study what made sense, how to secure financing, what cap rates look like, where the value of the building lies, and that's through, buildings are worth money if you have long-term tenants in them. So he had to learn that. That wasn't something we knew. So it's definitely role model and just digging into something that we wanted to do and learning everything that we could about it.
And it sounds like you're also investing in areas that are really great business centers.
Data.
Yeah.
We can see where everybody's moving to.
And so you try to get there before they...
We do.
That's great. So during any kind of investing period, there's times to invest more, and maybe there's times to retreat and make sure, maybe button the hatches a little bit. How do you decide when it's time to grow and when it's time to maybe pull back a little?
There's a couple of lessons that I've learned. If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Okay.
Right? And I know that everybody's so like, oh, the Bitcoin and the crypto, and back in the day it was subprime mortgages and everybody's making so much money and everybody at the sushi bar was making $1 million a year. And when it becomes that, like so easy, probably not a good time to invest. But on the flip side, when things are really bad, like today, it's really bad. Commercial buildings, commercial space is bad because everybody's working from home. It's bad. Tends to be a pretty good time to buy. So, it's not in all aspects that way, but in the last year and a half, probably last year was the hardest year in mortgage in 23 years. And we grew more last year than any other year in business. So we set our company up right. to have the liquidity and the cash to be able to acquire the mortgage companies, to bring on talent. So, and we're doing it while people are experiencing a lot of pain. So kind of, if it sounds too good to be true, probably too good to be true, don't go in. If there's a lot of pain going on, you might want to dig in to see if there's opportunity in that pain.
So when you're in a good financial position, when everyone else is retreating, that's the time to go in sometimes.
Yes.
And conversely, when you're doing well financially, when everyone else is going in, that might be the time to...
When you start to hear it and every single friend's making a ton of money, you're probably too late to the game.
Yeah, the timing. So
It's timing.
It's all about timing, isn't it?
Yeah.
So let's talk about your mistakes.
I don't make them anymore.
You don't make them anymore. I know you've got a book you're going to be writing about mistakes. But let's talk about, as you think back and you reflect back at different decisions you've made. And one of the things we've established very early on in our conversation today is that you've learned from mistakes. And so you approach mistakes the right way. But what is the biggest mistake, business mistake, that you made?
You know, there's been micro mistakes, and that's because I didn't know. Nobody knows how, what they're going to experience in business. I would probably say one of the biggest catastrophic mistakes I have made is hiring the wrong people. And I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when you have a company culture, which is super important to be able to establish what your company is, and the culture and how we treat each other and how we treat our customers and consumers, that philosophy has to be aligned, especially at the top. So one of the worst mistakes I made was hiring somebody at the top and bringing them in at the top, and they were so culturally misaligned with us. So it disrupted the feeling of the company. It's almost like having this healthy body and taking cancer and putting in it. It can destroy your work culture. And we were very fortunate that we were able to part ways with this human, but that was probably the biggest mistake. And I thought it's because he brought something to the table that I didn't have when I had it all along. So you always think that you need something else outside of what your values are to be bigger, to grow more, when really it's in you to get bigger and grow more. So that's probably thinking that I could hire somebody else instead of just rising to the challenge and becoming that bigger, better, more noble leader.
So other entrepreneurs, as they're starting to maybe bring in high-level individuals to join their team, they should be very sensitive to the culture they're trying to create and make sure that...
Just take their time. We have this saying that we learned at Zappos, the shoe place. Rick and I went to their cultural training, that it's slow to hire, quick to fire. So take your time and really digging into this person's background and making sure they're the right fit and they fit culturally into your dynamics of your company, because everybody that's been looking up to you for leadership, now you're bringing somebody else that's completely opposite. It doesn't work, and it will scare people.
So you'll have a better success with an employee if they come in and they fit in well and they have a good culture fit,
100%.
Even if they haven't learned everything yet and they're going to need to really develop a lot of skills along the way. That person's going to be better than the one that comes with a beautiful resume but doesn't fit in.
Exactly.
So let's talk about what mistakes you see other entrepreneurs make as they're starting businesses. I'm sure through the years, you've had wonderful opportunities to interact with other entrepreneurs and young entrepreneurs, seasoned entrepreneurs. What are the biggest mistakes entrepreneurs make?
Not preserving capital. With Instagram, I can see new startups or, startups that get a ton of VC money, and now all of a sudden the owners are driving nice cars, or the office furniture and we got a new office. I mean, you don't need a fancy desk to do a job. And so I can see them spending capital much too rapidly, thinking that it's going to continue to flow. Well, we're in an economy where, look at where inflation is right now, how that impacts business, consumer goods. And I think that they don't anticipate that at some point, your business could hiccup, or we call it the faucet turns off. The minute interest rates go up, all business stops in mortgage. I mean, it's literally like within a day, the phones stop ringing. So if we don't prepare for the faucet going off, we will be out of business. So preparing and keeping capital in the company and not looking for those instantaneous joys like these, the big house or the big cars in the beginning. I mean, you really should preserve capital in the company.
So a lot of entrepreneurs, when they start to get funding, they start
Spending it all.
spending it all personally and not really using those resources to really invest it in the company itself.
Right. Preserve capital, keep your company sustainable, because now you're responsible for the 5 people, 24,000 people that work for us, right? So we are responsible for them and all their families. So it's our duty to build a sustainable platform that they can come to work today and be rest assured that they're going to have a paycheck. So we have a lot more duty than we think we do when you're building a company. So preserving capital is 100% really important, and it can make or break. And our industry is making and breaking people today. The people who have capital are thriving. The people who spent all their money are not.
No, that makes perfect sense. So entrepreneurs, you get your investments, when you get the funds, you get the investors, use that money to make yourself sustainable.
Yes.
Don't use it to celebrate.
No, those things come with time.
So thank you for sharing some of your business philosophies. In a little while, we're going to talk about your leadership philosophies.
Great.
It's now time for our leadership example. Today's leadership example comes from HispanicExecutive.com. Latinx represent 20% of the U.S. population and own 6.5% of U.S. businesses. Here are the top Latinx-owned U.S. startups. It's now time for our leadership lesson. Today I'm going to tell you how to overcome imposter syndrome. I'm Jay Barbuto, and here is today's leadership lesson. Ever feel like you do not deserve your successes, or that soon others will learn that you are an imposter? 82% of people experience feelings of imposter phenomenon, which can contribute to increased anxiety, depression, less risk-taking in careers, loneliness, and career burnout. So, how do we take this self-doubt, self-loathing, and self-discrediting and turn it around for good? Today, I bring you 7 tips for overcoming imposter syndrome. Number 1, learn the facts. One of the best ways to manage imposter feelings is to address the cognitive distortions contributing to them. To do this, consider the facts that support your current success. You've probably done a lot to earn your place, so this is the time to recognize these credentials and neutralize your imposter feelings. Number 2, share your feelings. Finding trusted individuals with whom to share these feelings can reduce loneliness and provide objective feedback, and may reduce the self-narrative that we are imposters. Number 3, celebrate your successes. Many who suffer from imposter syndrome excuse their achievements away. Stop doing this. If someone congratulates you, stop, pause, and appreciate what they're telling you. Number 4, let go of perfectionism. This is an impossible standard. Change your mindset by focusing on the progress you have made rather than how far you still have to go. Also, when you fail, this is not proof that you don't belong. This is just an opportunity to learn and grow. Tip number 5, cultivate self-compassion. You're as good as you believe you are, not as good as others think you are. With stronger self-insight, you can catch these feelings and manage these emotions rather than being a victim of them. Number 6, share your failures. Discussing your failures and lessons learned with others can alleviate many negative imposter feelings. And finally, tip number 7, accept it. Imposter feelings are natural. Career advancements can bring about new rounds of imposter feelings. Remind yourself that these feelings are normal and we must accept them without diminishing our self-worthiness. Follow these 7 tips and you can manage imposter feelings. Enjoy your successes and live a more healthy life that you have earned. I'm Jay Barbuto, and this has been your leadership lesson. And there you have our leadership lesson. Let's continue our conversation with Patty Arvielo. Patty, we're going to talk a little bit about your leadership philosophy now.
Absolutely.
So, Patty, tell us, what is your leadership philosophy?
I truly believe empathy is really the way leaders should show up. You know, when I decided to get into the mortgage industry, but soon realized I was in the people business, because without people, my business doesn't thrive, it doesn't grow, it doesn't exist. You know, employee-wise, team member-wise, consumer-wise. People don't buy for me, people don't work for me. So my leadership, philosophies are that I drive people. Like, I have to inspire people, I have to walk in their shoes, I have to be seen as an empathetic leader. I care a lot, and it's not what you see in US-based companies. You usually see, some vision of a CEO yelling and driving hard numbers and calling people names in the C-suite. And, that's totally opposite of how I lead our company. And at first, I don't know that it was really appreciated in our industry, but I think it's a large reason why we've grown last year, because most of my competitors are driven with that kind of culture where that hard driving, where we don't even consider how somebody shows up in the room. That's just not how people want to be treated anymore, and they don't want to show up to work that way anymore. So I think early on, choosing empathy over hard driving was kind of natural for me, but now I really study on how I can just even furthermore understand where people are showing up, how they're showing up to work, and how they're showing up for me.
And it sounds like there's a big cultural benefit that comes from that. By having a more empathetic approach in your leadership, you're able to create an atmosphere.
Yes, we have an extremely diverse C-suite. We have an extremely diverse company. In the financial services industry, we're 58% female over male, and we're at 43% minority employed. And that wasn't on purpose. It's, when you breed a culture of inclusivity, people are drawn to the brand and to the company. If you Google me, you can obviously see that I come from a diverse background, and people are attracted to that. So diversity can't be something in a book anymore, or inclusion can't be in a book or a policy. It has to be the makeup of the company, because every voice around that table, whether it's a Black voice, a Latina voice, an Asian voice, I don't walk in their shoes, so they're telling me how to show up for those consumers, and there's value there. Their perspectives are invaluable to a company.
So as a leader, the importance of having empathy and creating a good culture is key. So what do you do to attract really good people? How do you fill your leadership team?
Well, we're very much aligned in our philosophies, and we have like a leadership forum in the beginning of every year where we really just drill it into them. Not only that, we make them go back, because these are the leaders in the company, right? And that's great that they understand where we're going, who we are, what we want to be, and how we want to treat people. But if it doesn't get down to the majority of the team members, it doesn't work. So when they leave leadership this year, they went and recorded Teams meetings or Zooms meetings, and they recorded their meetings of them delivering the information we had at the C-suite level down. And those employees appreciate it, because they want to know where we're going. They want to see themselves grow. And they can't do that if we're not telling them where we're going.
So building a team is key. So how do you keep your team together? What do you do to retain the good people?
Well, my nickname at the company is the Heart. So I think that my employees see that I'm a very authentic leader, and I show up for them 100% authentic. I don't script anything when I talk to them or deliver any message that is inauthentic of who I am. I admit my mistakes. I admit where we're going, what the positive things that we're doing. I think I have a lot of retention for that reason, because people first. So it's people before profit, it's culture before profit.
So let's talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion and the role it plays at New American Funding.
People have asked me, I mean, if you pull out a DEI manual, I'm it. I'm the reason why you need DEI. I'm a Latina, I'm a woman, I show up, I have an ownership position in one of the largest companies in the country in our sector. So naturally, my company has become who I represent because of mirroring, meaning other people see me as a leader that they can be. So the importance of mentorship, role modeling, mirroring in this country is so important because we are a country made up of diversity, right? This isn't anything new, and I think it drives me crazy when I see large companies come out with where they're going in the next 2 years, and they're like, oh, we're gonna get into minority lending, or we're gonna get into serving the underserved. I'm like, okay, well, that's what our country's made up from, so getting into it is why people feel not seen or unappreciative or boxed out of wealth. So we need to be companies that show up for every single person that's in this country. And that means diversity and inclusion has to be a big part of what you do. And as a woman, you know, it's not like I show up thinking that I should be where men are today by statistics, right? Because women really have only been full force in the workforce for 50 years, meaning I'm 59, so it hasn't been that long where women are really showing up and people are pulling them up. In the 50s, if somebody like me showed up, they'd be like, oh, you're really talented, but a guy needs to be above you. And that's just how it was. And now that isn't how it is. Now, do people feel that way? Yes. But they also have to be patient that we're evolving as a workforce and that women are still bearing children and we still have choices that we have to make whether we're going to go to work or stay home with our kids. I mean, we do have different lifestyles than men that need to be appreciated in the workforce.
So how does a company make themselves a preferred workplace by making sure that they are attractive to a wide range of people?
Well, a wide range of people. You know, there are issues before around, you know, leave. And I mean, if you pull up to my company, there's, you know, the parking spots in the front are for pregnant women, you know, and the males are champions of what we do for women because males are women's first role model, their dads. So we have this really great balanced culture of how men are knowing that we're showing up in full force to succeed now, right? But they're also knowing their importance in leading us upwards and keeping us from rising and being our first role models as our dads. So we kind of teach that. I think it just resonates with the population, it resonates with people. They show up and they feel good about, you know, that most, I mean, I'm the CEO, I'm a woman, my husband's co-CEO, our president is a woman. So, you know, Rick is outnumbered in leadership. So I think it's just a natural evolution for women to see that they can rise.
So succeeding in, you've got a lot of different ventures that you're involved in. You've got investments in real estate, both commercial and residential. You're running this amazingly huge lending company. How do you find the time or devote the time or prioritize the time? How do you manage your time to make this all work?
Well, the good thing about the iPhone is that calendar. I mean, I calendar everything. And I'm religious to it. And I calendar everything, me time, kid time, downtime, mental space time. I mean, everything is on the calendar and I look at it religiously. Every Sunday, I manage the week. And the night before the next day, I manage the day. So I'm never reactionary. I know where I'm gonna be, where I'm gonna show up, how much time it's gonna take me to get there. And yeah, I do a lot of self-care. I do. I need to show up in the best version of me. And sometimes, you know, anybody's anxiety or mental health can get kind of out of whack. I don't care what anybody says. We all have issues with balancing our feelings, emotions day to day. You know, that's life. So I have to show up and be the best version of myself. So I have to give myself that time to heal sometimes.
So you schedule right in mental time as well.
Oh, yeah.
So what does that look like?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so massages for me are not like for a massage. It's for me to quiet my brain because I literally am in there going, okay, when I get out of here, I got to call that person back, that person. So I'm really trying to just meditate while I'm in there and clear my mind, and that helps me. You know, I know a lot of people are talking about mindfulness and meditation, and I honestly will tell you, I did not know the importance of it until I too now see so many people showing up with imbalanced feelings, a lot of anxiety. I think social media drives a lot of anxiety. And so I have to show up for my people. So I have to be an example to be able to teach my team members that it's okay to admit that you're anxious or that you're depressed or whatever it is, and show up so that we can lead you to different facets of healing. Because, you know, if you're not happy at home, you're not happy at work. I say that all the time to my employees. If you're not happy at home, you're not going to be happy at work. You're not going to show up for us as your best self. So mental health is a really big concern of mine right now that's not being paid enough attention to.
But organizations that are paying attention to these things and are prioritizing these things, they're really going to be creating an environment that's going to attract some of the very best people.
It creates loyalty because people, they show up knowing that they matter.
That's great. So what do you want your legacy to be, Patty? How do you want to be remembered?
My mom says it all the time. I think I will be remembered as very generous. Generous of my time, generous with what I've made throughout my career, giving back. I think my business school is probably going to be my biggest legacy because it'll have my name on that building for, I think that university was the first four-year university in Orange County. So it's already 100 plus years old. So I think that that's going to be a legacy. So I'm really working in the next 2 years to see how I can make an impact with the students now. The first ones will graduate this year from the Patty Arvielo School of Business. So that's my legacy.
It's now time for our final word. This is a chance for you to give our viewers one final pearl of wisdom or piece of advice.
Oh, geez, I have so much advice to
You
give.
get more than one.
But I would always say, I said this last week in a Newsweek article. I would say to love yourself, that you matter and that you are important and you're good and you're confident and you're smart and you're beautiful, because all those negative words that we tell ourselves as we grow up, we're not pretty enough, we're not, all of those things really impact who you are as a person. So loving yourself is super important, because if you can't love yourself, others can't love you either.
Great. And there you have our final word. I want to thank you, Patty, for joining us on today's show, sharing your wisdom, your journey, your business philosophies, and your leadership philosophies. Our viewers have really had a treat today.
Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
If you have a question or need advice, connect with us by email, leadership@fullerton.edu, or on Instagram at CSUF-CFL. This has really been an empowering show. Thank you to our featured guest, Patty Arvielo. Join us each episode of The Leadership Voice, where your leadership journey is our passion. I'm Jay Barbuto on behalf of the Giles O'Malley Center for Leadership at Cal State Fullerton, and we'll see you next time right here on The Leadership Voice.